Plotting or pantsing? Which makes it part of your writing process? Do you like to have your story mapped out for you before you start to write? Or do you like to sit in front of the blank page and just go for it? Well, today we're going to be talking about some potential advantages and disadvantages of plotting and pantsing. So keep watching. Hello and welcome to the Mythic Quill. I'm Sherry Leclerc. So before we get into today's discussion, I just want to talk a little bit about what plotting is and what pantsing is, for the sake of anyone who maybe hasn't heard those terms before. And I'm going to give an analogy to describe it. So I'm going to compare my husband's travel preferences and my travel preferences. So my husband travels a lot for work and he's been to many new places. But he's the kind of guy that will go into a new place he's never been before without a map, without a GPS, and just wander around and discover things as he comes across them. So if you were to liken his travel preferences to writing, he would be a pantser. Me, on the other hand, I like to have a map and a GPS. I like to plan where I'm going to go next and how I'm going to get back home and all of those things. And if I don't have a plan or a map, then I feel really uncomfortable and anxious. So if you were to compare me, my travel habits, to writing habits, then I would be considered a plotter. So today I want to talk about some potential advantages and disadvantages of each. This is things I've come up with from things I've read and from discussions with other authors as well. So of course everybody is different, and what works for one person might not work for another. But I just want to talk about some potential advantages and some potential pitfalls of both plotting and pantsing. So in plotting, some potential advantages are you go in there with a really good understanding of your characters, the world that you're working in, your plot line, your storyline. So you have less opportunities for digression and ending up with things that you have to cut out at the end. So you're pretty much mapped out and you kind of know where you're going to go next. When you compare that to pantsing, for pantsing, you have like kind of a less firm idea of where you're going next. So you could end up with a lot of plot digressions that you have to cut out at the end. Another advantage for plotting that's related to that is, of course, you're going to have an idea of what your plot points are, what your pinch points are ahead of time. So you're more likely to see obvious plot holes before they happen. So that means you can fix them as you're working through your outline. For pantsing, you might not actually see these ahead of time, which means you might have some big plot holes that you have to fix at the end during the editing process. Also, another advantage of plotting is you have the potential for feedback. So you can show colleagues, other writers, friends, family, your outline and kind of get their opinion on it and get some feedback before you start to write. And you can make adjustments based on that. Also, it's easy to track your progress and to see the road ahead because you know exactly where you want to go next. And of course, you get the opportunity to choose a plotting method that works best for you. So I've seen authors who do one-page outlines of just the basic points of their story. And then there's other authors who I've known to do like 40-page summaries of or plots of their story. So it really depends. There's a lot of variation there in what could potentially work for you. Some potential pitfalls of plotting. First, the process might seem daunting to new authors and might end up discouraging them from wanting to try, because it might be a bit of a process that they're not used to. There's a lot of technicalities involved, so it might seem a little overwhelming. And you might end up spending a lot of time planning something that doesn't work in the end. And you can kind of consider that like kind of lost time. But on the other end of that, if you didn't do that, then you could end up with a story that doesn't work. So there's pluses and minuses to that one as well. Also, another potential pitfall of plotting is, despite your plans, your characters might end up with other ideas. So your plot might end up digressing. And a lot of times these digressions and these ideas can be a positive thing. They show creativity. However, if you're kind of spent time plotting and you're kind of stuck to that plot, you might actually be more resistant to change. So you might have these like flashes of intuition or flashes of creativity that you might be prone to ignore because they don't fit with the plan you already had. Here are some potential advantages for pantsing. You can get into your story right away. So it might seem like a faster process and it might be more motivating because you're right into the story from the get-go. And the writing process might seem faster and smoother because it's flowing naturally. And since it flows organically, there's more opportunity for you to come up with novel ideas and to fit in like those flashes of inspiration, put those ideas into your story. There'll be less stress and worry about the technical aspects of writing and the structure of your story and so on, which means you're less likely to overthink or overcomplicate things and lose your motivation. But again, there's some potential pitfalls for pantsing as well. First of all, you might have trouble deciding where to begin your story. And this always reminds me of those scenes in movies and television shows where you're in a coffee shop, there's a writer sitting at a table with their laptop open, and someone goes over to talk to them and the page is completely blank. So that's what that brings to mind for me. Another potential pitfall of pantsing is that there might be problems that might be missed until the editing stage, when they could be more complicated to fix. Also, you're more prone to digressions along your path. So instead of your story following the regular arc of like your inciting incident, rising action, the climax, and the resolution, you might end up with a story that's all over the place. And again, you might end up with chunks of that don't fit with your major plot. So that means you might end up with chunks of it that have to be disregarded, thrown out. Also, you might not have a strong enough plot or subplots. You might not have a strong enough sense of your character. So what all that means is that even though it might seem like the process is faster at the beginning than someone who plots, it might end up taking more time at the back end, at the editing stage, because you might have to go through it, throw out things that don't work for your story, and you might have to kind of strengthen some parts of your story or rewrite parts of your story. Because, you can try to kind of keep up with your plot line and your characters as you go along, but some of it might not end up working, and you might have to actually work to make it stronger. So as you can see, there are both advantages and potential pitfalls for both plotting and pantsing. And in the end, you have to decide what works for you. I do have a couple of pieces of advice, and in particular for new authors. So for pantsing, the authors that do best with pantsing are those who are experienced and who have a strong sense of story structure. That doesn't mean, of course, that new authors can't pants. Because if you're a reader and you're real well-read in your genre, you might have a good sense of story and what needs to go where. But you have to be really careful that you're working your plot really well and you get to know your characters really well as you're going to make sure both your plot and your character development are strong enough. Another piece of advice for new authors: if you are a pantser, ask yourself why you're a pantser. Is it because you like your story to flow naturally and you like to discover things as your characters do, so it seems more natural? Or is it because you're intimidated by the process of outlining? If it's because of the intimidation factor of the process of outlining and story structure, there are resources out there for you. If you join a site like Readsy, for example, they have lots of sheets. They have character development sheets. They have outline sheets. There's a lot of free resources on there that can potentially help you. And there's also a lot of books out there that can help you. Actually, on my website, I have added a new page as resources for authors. And one of the resources that I have used in the past, and I should say, by the way, that I'm going to link it down below. And there's also links on my resource page on my website. And a lot of them have affiliate links, but this is not an ad. I'm talking about books and resources that I've used myself and I found helpful. So for today's talk, the one that I think that would be most helpful is Outlining Your Novel by K.M. Weiland. There's a book, of course, that you can read through, but there's also a workbook where you could go through all of the points of the story and map it out ahead of time. Again, you don't necessarily have to use everything in the book. You can pick the things that you think will work for you. But when I use this book, I actually kind of reference the workbook, but write in a notebook. That way I can keep using this book over and over again with other stories. So again, I'm going to link that book down below in the description. I'm also going to put a link for my author resource page on my website. And again, like I said, there are affiliate links for some of those things, but this is not an ad. I'm talking about resources that I've used myself and that I found helpful. Okay, so that's all I have to say about plotting and pantsing today, but I would be interested in hearing what you have to say about them. So if you have any opinions to share, if you have any insights, if you have any questions or comments, please post them in the comment section below. If you've enjoyed today's video and you found it helpful, then please give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more content like today's video, or more things about writing or publishing, or just stories in general, then please click the subscribe button. And if you hit the bell icon, you'll be notified the next time I post an episode. So thank you for watching today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.